Glad Deirdre went before me because she makes my job a little easier, because what she did was not only explain the current situation with the federal budget and all the ongoing attacks on our class, but also explaining the inner workings of capitalism, what motivates it, what propels it. And so it really helps to put my remarks within that context, because as many of us know, as Marxist revolutionaries, living under capitalism permeates and institutionalizes every aspect of social thought and behavior, unless you're a revolutionary. That being determines one's consciousness, depending on whether you are part of the struggle for revolutionary change or not. Culture, whether it's movies, TV, the internet, music, sports, and much more, they play a central role under capitalism, because culture helps to reinforce all forms of inequality to the benefit of the 1%. The ruling class that owns the means of production, including media, and super exploits labor all around the world. Just as there is a military-industrial complex or a prison-industrial complex, all for making profits at the expense of providing for human needs, there's also a cultural industrial complex. Culture is part and parcel of the popular saying, the ideas of any time are the ideas of the ruling class. And if you dare to go against the grain of these reactionary ideas, that is racism, sexism, homophobia, pro-war, by trying to portray a progressive idea or character in acting or writing, whether conscious or unconscious, you will suffer the consequences in terms of backlash, scrutiny, or even isolation. So I think this is a perfect moment to segue into this year's Academy Awards broadcast that occurred this past Sunday. There's never been a time when there hasn't been good reasons to criticize the Oscars, precisely because the Academy Awards are a high-profile reflection on capitalist society. We should keep in mind that not only 40 million plus viewers watched all or some of the telecast just inside the United States, but at least 1 billion people worldwide watched the telecast due to the global reach through high technology, that movies have especially really reached that goal in terms of being produced in the United States, even though there may be other industries that are much larger than the United in terms of the entertainment, like India, for instance. Still, the U.S., because of its technological advances, still controls much of what we see in terms of movies around the world. Plus, it is cheaper to watch a first-run movie by streaming on the internet now, on your TV, than going to an expensive multiplex cinema. So it's not surprising that more people watch the Oscars worldwide than even the Super Bowl. So last year I gave a talk on how a brilliant African-American actor, Viola Davis, was snubbed by the overall Academy when she lost to Meryl Streep, who won the Best Actress Award for her portrayal of reactionary British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. Last year, in all of the acting categories, 3 out of the 20 nominees were actors of color. This year, 2 out of the 20 acting nominees were actors of color. This is no coincidence when you consider the forces who dominate the Academy voters. In a 2012 article released by the Los Angeles Times, Unmasking the Academy, Oscar voters, overwhelmingly white, that's the name of it, white male. The article stated that based on a 2011 study, out of the more than 5,700 voting members of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, 94% are white and 77% are male. Only 2% are black and less than 2% are Latina or Latino. According to the Writers Guild of America, women made up only a mere 17% of employed writers of America. In 2011. A San Diego State University study stated that in 2011, women made up 18% and 9% of the Academy's producer and director branches, respectively. So these statistics alone indicate the institutionalized racism and sexism in the Academy, and really throughout the U.S. movie industry. And there has been little to no expectation that any radical changes happen with these statistics in 2012. Denzel Washington, the great actor, in reaction to this 2000 study stated that, quote, if the country is 12% black, make the Academy 12% black. If the nation is 15% Hispanic, make the Academy 15% Hispanic. Why not? End quote. This study helps to put into perspective for this year's Academy ceremony, which managed within a 3.5 hour span to bash people of color, women, LGBTQ people, Jewish people, and elevate pro-war films, especially Argo, who won the Best Picture, award, and to a lesser extent, Zero Dark 30, which portrayed the Pentagon's assassination of Osama bin Laden. And I think because, Congress, those in Congress criticized that film because of its portrayal of torture. I think it lost a little bit of its luster in terms of winning any awards, but still, it was nominated for quite a number of awards. That is Zero Dark 30. But before I get to Seth MacFarlane, who was the host, I want to mention that the Best Picture Oscar went to Argo, which was the same studio, Warner Brothers, that produced the racist, anti-Arab, anti-Persian film 300 a few years ago. And I would like to read a short article that comes from the Iranian news agency, I think it's called Fars in Tehran, about this movie, which I want to really thank. I was hoping he would be here tonight, Kazem, our wonderful comrade Kazem, who provided me with a lot of information about the reaction to Argo in Iran. And I really think we have enough information to even do a separate article about it. But I think this particular article really sums up the true aims and objectives of this film. And this is a quote. On November 4th, 1979, Iranian university students took over the U.S. Embassy, which later came to be known as the U.S. Spy Den, to thwart Washington's plots against the Islamic Revolution. Inside the embassy, the students found shredded documents which proved their convictions. Since then, Iranians have celebrated the November 4th takeover of the embassy, when 52 Americans were held hostage for 444 days. But the newly produced and staged Argo, a 2012 American thriller film directed by Ben Affleck, shows Tony Mendez, a CIA operative, led the rescue of 6 U.S. diplomats from Tehran. The U.S. and Canadian officials stressed that the story is true. This film shows militants storming the U.S. Embassy in Tehran in retaliation for the nation's sheltering the recently disposed Shah. More than 50 of the embassy staffs are taken as hostages, but 6 escape and hide in the home of the Canadian ambassador. Addressing a meeting about Argo here in Tehran, prominent Iranian movie director Nader Talassadeh said that U.S. spy den takeover by Iranian students was a great failure for the U.S. And this is a quote from him, that U.S. embassy takeover was a humiliating defeat for Washington. And the movie Argo is just a piece of propaganda, he said. He said that the ending of the scenarios is, quote, complete fiction, end quote, as it has been recorded in history that the, quote, 6 went to the Iranian Foreign Ministry first and then to the Canadian Embassy and could eventually leave Iran and return to their country legally with their passports in their hands. The critic further added that Hollywood makes use of its best potentials and largest capacities to defame Iran or pretend that the U.S. has defeated Iran. It took them 30 years to produce this drama because the U.S. had no winning card in the 1979 hostage-taking, he said. They, the U.S., didn't have anything in Tabas Desert where they were defeated again, but they make films empty-handed and have nothing to say, said the critic. So that's the end of the article. So, comrades and friends, the fact that this anti-Iran film was presented with the most prestigious Oscar award during this period is no coincidence. And the fact that First Lady Michelle Obama presented this award raised a lot of eyebrows, and understandably so, as the Obama administration continues its threats of war against Iran's sovereignty, including the sanctions. There are a few other racist aspects of the Oscars that I want to acknowledge, and that is the lack of acting nominations for the anti-slavery movie Django Unchained. Now, this is a very popular movie, made a lot of money, got rave reviews. I mean, even Quentin Tarantino won the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. And it did create quite a bit of debate, especially amongst black activists, as to the merits of it or not. But there is no debate that the film brought the brutality of slavery to a mainstream audience, more than, I can't think of any other film that has done this than Django Unchained. Again, it was a box office hit, which is unheard of for a movie portraying slavery, except for maybe 1939's Gone with the Wind, which of course was pro-slavery, pro-Confederate. But Django Unchained, what made it stand out is that it had 3 black actors who were the main characters. Jamie Foxx, who played he was Django, the former slave, Kerry Washington, his spouse, who he sets out to free, and then Samuel L. Jackson, who played the house slave. Not one of them was nominated. But the actor who was nominated and won was Christoph Waltz, who is white. So again, here the black characters are just portrayed as, incidental characters, part of the scenery, and not, the main characters in a movie about slavery. It's just amazing. It's astounding. Also, during the in memoriam segment, which pays tribute to those in the movie industry who have played a role either in front of or behind the camera, and who pass away every year before the next Oscar ceremony, there were some glaring omissions of people of color in this category. One of the most glaring omissions was Lupe Ontiveros, who you may have seen her in Selena. Anybody who saw the movie Selena, she played the woman who actually was accused of shooting her. She's been a movie actor for 35 years. She's played in over 300 movies. She was not even mentioned in this segment. And it was the National Hispanic Foundation for the Arts that sent a letter of protest to the Academy that her name was not added to this segment. And her family responded. And after the protest letter was sent by this foundation, her picture and name was added on the on-site line, the in memorial on-site line. But it was too little too late. And her family responded this way: Quote, "We believe the Academy's glaring omission displayed an indifference to the Latino community and made a statement about the lack of regard for Latino talent in film. It was also a missed opportunity by the Academy to reach out to millions of Latino movie fans who go to the movies at a higher rate than any other group in the United States." Now, that's a quote. And when she was alive, Miss Ontiveros was forced to play a maid, quote unquote, more than 300 times in film, which she had publicly denounced. It's a very similar situation to what happened to Hattie McDaniel, when who's the great African-American actor who won the Oscar for Gone with the Wind, the first one in history, but she played a character named, quote unquote, Mammy. So their situations are very, very similar. And then there was a very popular actor, Sherman Hemsley, who was the lead actor in The Jeffersons for many, many years, the #1 show for I don't know how many years. He appeared in movies, and he wasn't even mentioned in this in memoriam segment.